Sorry. Welcome everybody once again to the webinar LinkedIn to get a job. Make the most of your network. So I'm happy to see many of familiar faces here. Others who don't know us at all. Others who does. Some Franklin people as well. So I will start with myself. My name is Silvia Las Cuevas. I work at EucA as communication officer. And welcome to this fourth webinar organized together with Franklin University, Switzerland. So a big thank you to them. And this fourth webinar is in the framework of the Career Counseling Project, a new project where we are aiming to give students, to connect the students with the professional world and to help them with this little jump to get into that like dream job. So that's it. I will, of course, again say thank you to Guido and Ebony. I will introduce them for you to know. So Ebony Rayford, she's there, you see her. She's Assistant Dean of Student Life and Career Services at Franklin University, Switzerland. She has large experience in student affairs, student development, and career counseling, gained through his years at Miami University, University of California, and now Franklin University, Switzerland in Europe. So then we have Guido Slembach, as always, forget my pronunciation. So Guido is co-founder and managing director at Lux Management Consulting. He studied international relations and management at Franklin University, Switzerland, and nowadays he's teaching career development and entrepreneurship there at Franklin at one of their courses. I would like to give them the floor to say some welcome words before we go with the structure of the webinar. So if you want to say something, feel free.
All right, welcome everybody. We're excited to help you this evening and just have a good time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We're here to assist you.
Exactly. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for your interest in this. My name is Guido, and thank you for the introduction. As Ebony mentioned, we're trying to do this as proactive from your side as possible. So if you have questions or something to add or disagree or agree with something, please don't hesitate to involve. Would be nice.
Okay, thank you. So I will go a bit like very fast through the agenda, so you are more or less aware of what we're going to talk about. We will, Guido and Ebony, assistant as well, they will speak about your LinkedIn profile, then how to do the job searching, then how to do a correct network and use this tool like to networking. And they will talk then about the common mistakes plus LinkedIn Premium versus regular LinkedIn. We will have like a dedicated section for the questions and answers at the end of the webinar. But of course, Ebony and Guido will be like in charge of, and if they want to answer one of them beforehand, don't worry, they will. So sit back and relax, take paper and pen and enjoy. I give you now the floor and thank you.
Thank you for that. Hello again, everybody. Just in general about LinkedIn quickly, maybe. I think it's an extremely helpful platform for your job search. It's a platform, the only social media platform, big, global, accessible, that is focused on business, really a tool to create a business network. So on one side, to really find a position that's suitable for you, build your strategic career from there, and also once you are in the job, it helps a lot to do your job better or more easy maybe, because a lot usually depends on the network. no matter if it's knowledge sharing or if it's contacts, if it's sales, whatever. So I strongly advise, if you're planning to be in any kind of a professional framework active, to be very strongly active on LinkedIn. I'm not getting paid, by the way, but it's really extremely helpful because everybody's there for the same focus, you know. So nobody will look at you strange or anything when you address people for business purposes, for career purposes, because that's what everybody's there for. So it's already given a platform for your purposes, basically. I will now go on and share my screen where you can see my LinkedIn page. Can you see what I see? So this would be my starting page, right? And I think very important for attractive profile. I'll just go on mine here quickly so you can see a little bit. Obviously, attractive can be very different. You know, attractive LinkedIn profile is always adjusted to the field of work you want to be active in, the kind of level of positions you're active in or you're looking for, you want to develop in, and the purpose you're looking for in LinkedIn in general. So I don't think there's a special way how it has to be in order to be attractive. They can look very different regarding if you're, I don't know, in an NGO, if you're working for marketing, if you're working for consulting like me, or whatever field you want to go into. You can adjust it a little bit, your picture, your background picture, the information you provide, the writing style that you use, and all of that. So mine is clearly focused on an entrepreneur level, on an executive level. It starts with a background. It could be a company background, for example. It starts with a picture. It could be an average, corporate picture, basically, for example. Some even have the logo of the company on it that they're working for. In general, I think what makes the LinkedIn profile really interesting and really attractive in that sense is a lot of information. So always put rather too much information than too little. You never know what triggers people. You never know what people find interesting in your profile, what makes them invite you to an interview or follow up on the next pages, next steps with you. Yeah. So as you go down, for example, you have then an about, which should say something about yourself. Usually, mine, for example, defines. It can also be a smart quote or something, but something that shows maybe about your character, about your personality, or what you're generally interested in. You have your dashboard for your own control, and then you have the experience. And here, obviously, it's extremely important that you have as much information as possible. It's not legally binding like a curriculum vitae or whatever, but it obviously has to be appropriate. So you should not let out steps. You should not, go left and right with the information you put on there. It should be appropriate. It should be a lot. Yeah. Because again, you never know what people think is useful. Usually we have the job title, we have the company you're working for at the moment, since when is usually a good indicator to put also when you've been working there, where it is, and then it's usually good to write a little bit about what you've been doing in this company, university, or activity of what kind soever you've been active in. Put a little bit of background information, because job titles or titles in general, they can differ quite a lot from each other depending on which field you're in or which corporation, so that people get a better idea of what your daily tasks were or are there. Ideally, you write a little bit more than I do. So you go down with all the positions. You have an education background. You can pull skills and endorsements, where people can endorse you. I come to that a little bit later. I think it's a very interesting tool. You can have recommendations, languages, organizations that you're in. I'll come to that later, why it's interested. And also interest. So if I look at this profile as a recruiter, look at your profile as a recruiter, all this tells me something, right? And what does a recruiter do, no matter if it's in-house or external in an agency? They want to get an idea of you, and they want to get an idea of you beyond your CV, basically. So about your personality, about your interests, about everything. And this is why they most likely will check your LinkedIn profiles. They're most likely going to check all your social media profiles, even if it's appropriate or not. But most certainly your LinkedIn profile. So in the matter how you design it, basically, you can influence the way people see you if they have only that impression of yourself. And I think this is what makes a LinkedIn profile attractive or not, you know. So you make it attractive for the field you want to be working in. You know, if I want to be someone in this first, second, third year in the giant marketing company, for example, after university, I'd certainly have a different profile picture. You know, I wouldn't put something with a classical suit and a tie, because it's probably something that a lot of people in the advertising agency would not associate with or relate to. So you want to keep in mind that they want to have lunch with you at some point and meet you for after work or whatever. You know, so spice it up a little bit in the way that it's attractive for your field and for the kind of activities and the levels you want to you really want to engage in. Basically, you want to be active in. Yeah? The second thing I want to talk with you about, again, if you have questions, please let me know. The second thing I want to talk with you about is how to improve the quality of your network on LinkedIn, because that at the end is what it really comes down to. This is what really matters, because no matter how good your pages and everything, at the end, job search stands and falls long term, and your career in general with your network. So you can use this great tool to build an excellent professional network. How do you build your network? Obviously, on LinkedIn, it's a common thing to send out connection requests also to strangers, you know, and it's a business network. So if they see that you're somewhat related to their field, that they see that you work in the same field, that they see you have something in common in your studies, in your interests, or anything like that, they're most likely going to accept your invitation. If you send out 10 invitations, 9 will most likely be accepted. So you can start by that. You start building a base of contacts that you can use later on, that you can build on your job search, that you can build on your performance while you're in the position, and so on. So you start first of all with building a certain base of network on your LinkedIn profile. It's like your private database of contacts, right? 20 years ago, people would have giant staples of business cards on their desk and then ask a secretary or someone to type it in their database, you know. And this is basically what you can use LinkedIn for today. Also, when you go to events, when you meet people that you think are relevant for your career, at some point, you always connect with them on LinkedIn, right? How do you do it? You can go on the search field on the very top left, as you can maybe see, and you can search for people for certain keywords in your field. I'd say I'm looking for advertising. I'll just type it in, and I have an option. I can look for jobs on this upper left. I can look for content. I can look for people. So let's look for people, because I want to extend my network. And then I can have about 15,000 results of people that have something to do with advertisement. So that's probably a little bit too big. And I can go, okay, connections, people that are already connections, not so interesting for me. So second and third connections are interesting, because that's people LinkedIn allows me to connect to. I apply it, and I have a little bit of a better selection of only 14,000. I can go on locations. So I say, for example, I'm in Switzerland, and it's most relevant for me to network with people in Switzerland. I find Switzerland, I apply, and I only have 128 results left, you know. And I can see open for new challenge. This is where we come back to later. You know, this is one way to apply for a job, but find a job, for example. And then I can see by looking at the profiles, you know, if you have a paid account, we come to that later, you have a more detailed search. You can look at the profiles and you can see a little bit who's on the level that's interesting for you, who's really in the field that's interesting for you. and you can just send them a connection request. For example, click on their profile. I go through the profile. I see that it's interesting for me. Maybe at some point, more or less concrete. Doesn't have to be immediately. Think long term. Build now for later. You send the connection request. I'm not going to put a note. Some people do, and it's done. And most likely will be accepted in the next 48 hours. Yeah. This is one way. Later on, then LinkedIn will always send you connection request, people that it suggests you to connect with. Yeah. And these people, the suggestions that are being made by LinkedIn, it's an algorithm, obviously, will always be related to who you've been looking into before, who you've connected with before, and so on. So the algorithm learns your interest, it learns the kind of people you're interested in, basically, and will suggest you accordingly. Also, your profile will be presented to people as potential interesting contacts, to people that the algorithm defines as interesting for you. The algorithm works in the following way. If you have less than 500 contacts, it hardly ever sees you. So it's very important that you try to build your network over 500 people. This is when LinkedIn gets starting to really recognize you and to work with you. As you get more, obviously, you get more relevance. So your post, your content, everything will get more views. Also, more people, you will be suggested to more contacts, and more contacts will be suggested to you. Me, for example, I think I have some 6,000 or 7,000 network by now, 7,045. And so it's a relatively high presence for LinkedIn. It's not Instagram. And you get a lot of attention on the content you post on, which is very important for your job search. I'll come to that now. What should you share content-wise? Obviously, as I said at the beginning, it's a professional platform. It's not Instagram, it's not Facebook, it's not TikTok. And this is also something that people like to misunderstand in recent years about LinkedIn, and usually it's counterproductive. So don't put too much private. Don't put videos about yourself, trying to get people follow on your LinkedIn account or something. People get hiccups with these kind of things. They most likely will start to ignore your request, and will most likely ignore your job search and all of these kind of things. So it can be counterproductive if you take it in a too much private level. Keep LinkedIn always professional. What else is the content that you post? Obviously, as I said before, tailor it to your needs. Tailor it to not where you are, but tailor it where you want to go. So as they say, for example, you don't dress for the job you have, you dress for the job you want. And it's the same with your LinkedIn profile. You create a LinkedIn profile that goes where you are, where you want to be, not where you are. So the whole content that you post on your side, but also the postings that you do, the things that you like, the things that you share, all this content should more or less reflect where you're going or where you are. So, for example, I post a lot of content for a while, for many years. I had a Friday afternoon. I would always post something on how to spend it, and how to spend your money. And usually it was tools for toys for grown-ups are overly ridiculously expensive, and only hardly anyone could afford that, So with this, I would basically aim at an audience that is on a very executive level, because these are my clients. These are the people I need in my network in order to perform my job well, right? So I need top executives, So if I post these kind of things, that's what they're interested in. And they'll see that in their timeline, they click on it, they think it's interesting. And after a while, they get the impression, that I share certain interests with them. Obviously, as well, we post a lot with the company about scientific things regarding our job, regarding recruitment, regarding startups, and so on, so that we create a certain credibility. And this is what I absolutely urge you to do, is to use LinkedIn to create credibility. So the niveau, the level, the deepness, the content of the things you post basically will teach people a lot about how knowledgeable you are in the field, about what your interests are, how deep you go with these topics. And that can be a little bit left and right, because nobody is only interested in what your job is, but you are, the content you're posting is reflecting basically the idea of what people good get about you in a second impression after your CV, or sometimes even in the first, because we come to that. You can find jobs directly through LinkedIn. You see it on the upper part of the page, basically a job search. Is there anyone volunteering to share their LinkedIn page with us, so we can maybe look at it and we can give some impulses of what to maybe do better or differently, and give you some input, basically, what we think about that, and work on it a little bit. Good. So what do we notice? Thank you for that, first of all. What do we notice first when we look at it? I think we can feel a lot more information in it, right?
Just tell me to move up or down.
Yeah, move
This
up,
is
back
it?
up a little bit, please. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So this is very good, because we can do some things about it. I like the pictures, very professional, it's very good, and still reflects a bit the personality and everything. Usually you would like to have a background picture. It can be something professional. It can be something, for example, I have Lugano because I am in Lugano, that relates to you more or less directly. And then obviously, a student is very good, where you are. 21 connections, as I said, is something you actively want to work on. I recommend my students usually to send out at least 10 connection requests a day. Don't necessarily do it on weekends, or if you, depending on where you are, Friday, Saturday, Sundays. For example, I don't do it in this part of the world on Sunday mornings, because I think people have the right to, live their private life. But I say usually, if you send out about 10, then you slowly but steadily grow your network, and you want to get over the 500, so that the algorithm actually recognizes you, and that people see that you're active to a certain level. We go down a little bit. Then, if you have, usually there's the career part, right? Before education, you come to the career part. Usually, in the career part, if you have done anything where you think it's more or less interesting, relevant, if you have done a working student job, if you have done an internship, if you have helped your uncle in the summer break for a couple months, put it in there. You never know what triggers people. You never know what they think is something you took away from there that they might be able to use, for example. So rather put too much than too little, no matter how irrelevant it seems to you. Maybe it might seem relevant, very relevant to someone else. I've seen people that have gotten jobs on management level even, but throughout all levels, due to their hobbies that they put, for example, because there were common interests, or common universities that they had, and they invited them to an interview because they basically wanted to talk to them. So you have to do with people. You're dealing with people, and you never know what triggers them. So if you have jobs, if you have internships, anything, put it on there. It's very important. You have your education, very good, and I think that's good. If you have anything else, you can put it on there. Or if you want to explain, for example, for students, I usually recommend explain maybe a little bit about your studies, or so it can be quite different. You tell me I've studied economics. This can be very broad, can be very topics, a lot of topics within certain fields that you've discussed. Give me a little bit of information, basically. I like that you've put a lot of interest, because, as I said, this can very much matter a lot. Yeah, Ebony, can you please go down a little bit?
That's it.
Thank you. Okay, so that's it.
Well,
questions, or should I go on, or is it?
I'm going to stop sharing. And do you want to squeeze in Irene really quickly?
Yeah, sure. Irene, thank you for that. Parma, not too far from me. Graduate school, very good. I have a picture again. I would suggest put a background picture just a little bit more personal, and it looks more complete. The page looks more complete. You have 305 connections in a very good way. Keep going. As I said, about 10, 15 a day is usually a good thing. Dedicate 5 minutes. I don't know how much time all of you spend on social media. For me, it's quite a lot. For example, if you can dedicate 5 minutes, take 5 minutes from something else and put it into LinkedIn on a daily basis. It's really about daily. Don't go on it 2 times a month for 4 hours. It doesn't help. Do it daily or basically almost daily for a couple of weeks, a couple of months, and you'll see a very different results. Yeah. There's a nice short about exactly explains a little bit about your background and what you're interested in. We have 3 mutual contacts. Then I can already see in featured a little bit of content that you liked or did you follow, you've posted. So that again gives me a little bit of an idea about your credibility. Basically, are you really interested in the topic, or are you just applying for the job and really your complete interest in completely different things? I have some of the activities that you have done, and I can see a little bit on what triggers you, what is interesting for you. Very good. You have the experience. I think. For your level of career, it's a very good profile, to be honest. When I look into it, you have the small points underneath explaining a little bit what you've been doing there. It's a very complete profile. Please go down, Ebony. Thank you very much. See, exactly. It's well structured. I see the times on how long you've been active each time, how long you were in the company, recruiters and so on. They're always sensitive to so-called job hoppers. If you've been on every job just for a very short time, please keep that in mind as you build your career. You don't want to change jobs too often for small things, basically. So if avoidable, it's always stay in for at least 2 years, but that's a side note. We have education really complete. We have skills and endorsement, and this is something I want to go into. People can always that know you, and they go to your page, you get more traffic on your page. There's people that will endorse you and your skills, and it shows that you're not only saying that you can do that, but others do, and that's a lot of credibility. If I go out and tell everyone I'm the best dentist in the world, hardly anyone will believe me. It doesn't make me the best dentist in the world. But if 1 billion people are walking on this ground saying that Guido's the best dentist in the world, then you'll think I'm the best dentist in the world. I'll be acknowledged as the best dentist in the world. So these skills and endorsements are extremely interesting. If I see that 40 people saying that she's really good in marketing, I believe she's good in marketing. So use this, and as more traffic you get on your page, the more people will actually also endorse you and your skills. Basically, we have the languages. We have 3 honors and awards. Interests, really good. I think it's a very good page. The only thing I would say by looking at it very quickly is just maybe you want to have a nice background picture that makes it look even more complete, and then it's a very good page.
We're going to go to the next section.
The next section is we want to talk about the job search. Should I go back to my LinkedIn profile maybe? Good. So job search in general, I think job search is it's not just sending out CVs to potential jobs. It's very important that you look at it as a job. Basically, finding a job is a job. And it's much more than just sending out your CV. It's much more than your just cover letter. So you want to have your network ready. You want to sell yourself, basically. No matter you like my wording or not, but if you think about it for a while, maybe tonight or whenever, you'll come to the conclusion this is exactly what it is. You'll be selling yourself to some company or to some activity, to some organization, and so on. So do it rightly. Right? Once you have to do it and there's no way around it, you just do it right, And job search is you really build your network, people that you can ask You look actively for jobs. You might want to think about creating jobs within the companies. For example, if you define what you can do as an added value to the company, you can always address the company and say, this is added value that I can bring to you. Are you interested? And 1 out of 10 will invite you, because 1 out of 10 have that need, but they don't have a job opening open. They maybe don't know they have the need, or they don't know they can solve it by hiring someone, and so on. So sometimes you have to help people make the connection there. Yeah. As I said, job search can have many different ways. You can go on the upper part of LinkedIn page. You can click on jobs. You go on jobs, and you have a really good job search. You have saved jobs, you have applied jobs, you have job alerts, salary things. You can go in more interview map. You can build a resume. You can go by skill. We can do, again, I don't know, recruitment. We can do, as an example, for example, and I have 2,950 jobs open for recruitment, right? So I can, for example, go here, and I can see some that have been interesting, for example, for me, because they're on executive level. They're in Switzerland, that I have marked, for example, in the past, the safe jobs, and you can define it a little bit, sort by date posted, LinkedIn features, company experience level, and so on. There's more filters, right? And then as you narrow it down, basically, most recent, or I leave it with most relevant, I have here internship, entry level. So in your case, this is probably most likely entry level jobs. You look at that. Don't be afraid to apply for jobs where it says a minimum of 2 years. Everybody wants people to have a minimum of 2 years. If you're entry level, you can always apply for jobs that it says 2 years experience or less, or a little bit of an experience. You can always apply for, right? You can go through a job search. For example, we have a recruiting coordinator for a very renowned bank in Switzerland. Click on it, and then it should actually open at some point. I don't know why it doesn't. Maybe the recruiting specialist. None of them opens. Oh, they open on the side. Sorry for that. And so you can save it. You can apply. You can see a little bit. 2 people have applied already. You see 500 people have applied. If you think you're really good for the job, you still do it. Otherwise, you might want to save your time. And now we come to a very important point. I have 3 connections working here. So if you have built your network and you see you have connections working for this company, instead of just going through the formal application process, you contact your contacts and you say, listen, I saw you working on this company. I saw you have an interesting position. I think it's be a great fit. Do you know who I can talk to? Who's the key decision maker? Do you have their email address? Can you help me in contact with them? Are you going to invite me for a coffee over? Are you going to set me up for a coffee with them, or whatever? So you go the indirect ways, always more likely you'll succeed. Otherwise, you go and apply, for example, and then there's different ways. Some you have to send your CV, with your CV. I can apply with my thing, which I don't even have, and or apply with my LinkedIn. I do next. And now I'm not going to click it because I don't really want to apply for that job, but you can apply with LinkedIn. Instead of sending your CV and everything, basically, you are sending them your LinkedIn profile, and they'll be notified that you're interested in the position, and that you are that this is your profile. And if they then come back to you for your CV or something, they can do it. It really depends, basically, on which way you want to go, and that's why I said, if you have a network at the very beginning, this is extremely helpful, because this is always a way to get to a job or to a decision maker regarding that job, and not through the standard staple of 200 applicants. So if you can use it, use it. Use groups in LinkedIn, for your credibility. If you see there's lots of groups, and you can join groups for showing your credibility, basically. You can join groups for getting a lot of information. I mean, I don't know how many recruiting groups, because people post things about the newest technology that they use, about methods that they use, and I got a lot of inspiration for that. I've done this job for 22 years now. I've built recruiting teams, I've been a recruiter, I've built recruiting companies, I've had recruiting companies, all this kind of stuff. I learn so much from these groups every day. And also, obviously, it helps engaging, again, building your contact and so on. Make sure it's useful, make sure it's targeted to your field, and again, for where you want to go, more than really where you are already. Yeah. Um, Groups can be useful if they are useful for where you want to go or where you are at the moment, basically. Then networking, again, I can't say it often enough. Network, network, network. This is basically as long as further you go in your career, talk to anyone who is successful in their career, no matter what you define as success or what they define as success, which can be very different. Talk to them and see what made them successful. Sooner or later, they mention their network. Sooner or later, they mention their contacts, the people that surround them. And you always want to network, and you want to actively use it, So you contact people, they contact you back, they accept your request. You can start a conversation with them. You don't send out a connection request and ask the person for a job. So you talk about, maybe you say, listen, I saw you're in this company, it's very interesting about it. Are you open to have a very quick chat about this maybe next week, or a certain topic that you have in common? You might be a writer and an editor, and you connect with people who are writers and editors, and you can brainstorm with them, and talk to them. Only a few will do it, but it's fine. Even if you just talk to them shortly on LinkedIn, or you send a short follow-up, they'll have you in mind, and they'll be open to put you in contact with a hiring manager. They're going to put you in contact with HR once you want to go through them. Or maybe if it's not for the job, it can be something just to give you interesting content on the field you're working in, or what's actually big topics in your field. Building credibility, again, building a network, and you never know what these people will be helpful for in the future. So it doesn't necessarily be now. Think long term, think strategically, and build your network that you can build your job search on, but also that you can build your career on, and that helps you to perform well in your job. So you most likely want to network with people who are slightly above you. If you're in the 3 years after college, you're purely only networking with people, and first year of the college, they can't do much for you. But people have been 20 years out of college, and the marketing giants, and you want to get in marketing, they're most likely not going to put up with you too much. They enjoy the connection request. Maybe they drop you a nice phrase or something, but they're not going to involve with you too much. So if you look into people who are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years above you, basically career-wise, these are people who are now starting to build their teams. So they'll be looking for people that freshly come from university. They're people who are on eye level with you, that want to go to drinks with you, that want to go for lunch with you, that want to go for a coffee with you, exchange ideas, and you go, and you never know what develops, which opportunities develop from there. Everybody knows everybody, and they might have heard about a job that is not posted officially, that you don't find, and they can guide you directly to the hiring manager. Yeah. I want to conclude on this topic with a recommendations endorsements that I said before. Again, this builds a lot of credibility. You also do it to others. This is a nice way to basically warm up a connection with someone. They accept your connection request. You can endorse them or whatever on their side, and they see this person's already done something for me. So you come back to listen, could you also do this for me? And you enter into a discussion, and you build a connection, and also, obviously, as I mentioned before, it gives a lot of credibility. Don't use LinkedIn to build a network of your friends and your family and people that you already know, and that never be helpful for you business-wise. You have them on LinkedIn. you have them on Instagram, you have them on Instagram, you have them on wherever your private network. This is really meant to be a professional network where you connect with people that be of any help for you in your career in the near future. It doesn't help to connect on LinkedIn with all the people that are in your classes in university, for example. You know? I think there was the idea to have a volunteer on the networking. Ebony, maybe what would you like the volunteer to show or to do?
If they want to share their page and maybe ask how they're doing their networking, possibly. If we have any volunteers, just to post your LinkedIn account or question in the chat.
Very good. Brussels. So I see already 500 connections. That's a good thing. Or plus, because this is all that LinkedIn shows, right? 500 connections plus. That's when people can see you have over 500, and this is also when it's becoming more interesting for the algorithm. Yeah, but I cannot say much about his connections or how he structures his.
Does that matter if we click on his connections? There we go.
So I see a lot of people from universities, a lot of people of deans and so on. And this is obviously a very good network for where you are as a student, you know. And if you're thinking of going to other universities, for example, later on, you know, then or study at work at a university, be a scholar, or you know, go on for masters and so on, then it's certainly a good network. If you want to go into business anytime soon, you might want to direct the contacts a little bit towards that. But honestly speaking, Ebony, I don't think we can do too much on the profile, on the networking. I think we'd rather leave it a little bit open for questions and answers later on.
Okie dokie. Thank you, Guillermo.
So the question was, what is the common mistakes on LinkedIn? I think a lot of the biggest mistake on LinkedIn is that it's not being used appropriately, that it's not being used enough. It has so much potential. If you just dedicate a couple of hours, sometimes can be a lazy Sunday afternoon or something, you know, one Netflix less and one LinkedIn more can give you a lot of insight on how the platform works. You'll see that there's a certain behavior. You don't post everything. You don't like everything like you maybe want to do on a private network, but you always keep in mind, basically, you keep in mind what's the message you're sending out, basically, right? Because people going on your page, they can later see what you've liked, what's been your activities, what have you posted, so it gives a good impression. So the second thing is, I think what's a common big mistake is that you have an incomplete profile. Especially recruiters, they go on your LinkedIn profile, they see a very incomplete profile, and they think you don't really care, you're not really professional or not part of the professional world, and you don't give enough input in this or enough effort. I'd say 99% of the recruiters that I know and talk to on a daily basis would agree if I'd say, if you don't have a good LinkedIn page, you are not looking for a job. If you don't have a good LinkedIn page, you're not looking for a job. If you don't use LinkedIn to network, to go through the jobs that are open job positions, you're not looking for a job. Going through company pages and looking for open jobs on their websites and sending your CV, this is very 90s. Don't do it. This can be 20% of your job search, but it cannot be 100%. If you don't have a good LinkedIn page, you're not looking for a job. So if people look at your LinkedIn page and they see it's quarterly full, basically, like you've been only, using it so roughly and so on, and it's not enough content on it, they don't think that you are seriously taking professional. They don't think that you're actively looking for a job. There's also an opportunity. I'm not sure where, to be honest. I can say somewhere in my LinkedIn profile, I'm open for job opportunities, and you should have this, and I can decide, for example, whether or not I want to have this visible for everybody, or if I just want to have this visible for recruiters. So, for example, only recruiters can see that I'm open to job offers, but other LinkedIn members cannot see. So, recruiters have usually a recruiting profile, membership with LinkedIn, and they then can see that you're open for job offers. If you want to keep it somewhat decent, secret, basically, if you're not don't mind to tell everybody, you just have it open to everybody, which I would suggest if you have nothing to lose there, because you never know who comes across your page and might be interested in hiring. You know. So I think that's very important. And then obviously, the golden rule: watch the content you're posting, watch the content you're liking. If it's politically extremely incorrect, or if it's just very off, you don't want to post a lot of party pictures of yourself, for example, except maybe if you are working in a field where this is very relevant. Um, then it could be it's a good idea, because as I said at the beginning, you always adjust your LinkedIn profile to the field you want to work in and the kind of jobs you want to work in. At this point, I think I would like to hand over the word for some closing words, and we have some questions and answers, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so thank you, Gita and Ebony. So we can go now through the questions and answers section. So if you are ready, we can start with one anonymous attendee that asks, is it okay to write to the representatives of companies you are interested in to ask if there are any job opportunities at this company? Or is it impolite? I mean, no, we cannot hear you.
I don't think it's impolite. I think you can do it. I would just do it strategically. And I think that this is actually the best way to find a job, is to be proactive. I wouldn't write them, though, if there's a job opportunity. I would make the homework, sit down, define, as I said at the beginning, honestly speaking, is the most promising way to find a job. You sit down for every company that's interesting for you. So you see this company is interesting for you. You define what your added value is that you can bring to the company that you think you're missing. And no matter how junior you are, and no matter how difficult it is for you maybe to think of added values you can bring to the company, they are. They can be cultural, they can be personal, they can be the way you think, there can be billions. Ask your friends and your family, they're most likely be able to give you a lot of points, and you work this out, and then you address this person, say, listen, I'd be very interested in working with you, and this is what I think I could add to your company. How do you see that? Are you open for a coffee, for example, or a quick chat about it, a short Zoom in times of Corona and COVID, but I think that's a very good approach, and define who's the right person to address. If it's the hiring manager, you don't write to the CEO if you're applying for a junior position, but you're looking who's the desk head or who's the department head for you, who's the head of the place, maybe the office representation where you want to work at. And this is the kind of people you address, and I think it's a very good idea. And if it's polite or not probably depends a little bit on your writing. But in general, I think it's a good idea. Sorry?
No, I was just going to say, can we really go back to the LinkedIn Premium? And is LinkedIn okay, or do we need LinkedIn Premium, or does it depend?
It really depends. I think in general, if you're a non-active job search and everything, and if it's okay for you, do LinkedIn. You have much better job search results on jobs. You have more search results on people you're finding. You have more emails that you can send. You have much more opportunities, but then it's not necessarily cheap. So I think most people are using LinkedIn actually without a premium account. I'm using it without a premium account by now. I've used many very highly paid premium accounts with LinkedIn for many years because I don't use it on a daily basis as much anymore as a recruiter in that sense. Every recruiter would have a premium account. And I think if you're on an active job search, you can afford it and so on, go for it. It opens a lot of opportunities. And there's several different packages that they have that give you different advantages. Look into what's more suitable for you. But I think for the basics, it's absolutely fine to have a non-premium account. You can always send a connection request to people. Once they accept it, you can send them in mails. And this is the biggest advantage next to the more refined search that you have on a premium account, so that you can send in mails. You can always do that once someone accepted your connection request. And as I said at the beginning, nothing strange about sending connection requests to strangers. On LinkedIn, the 7,000 contacts I have, I probably know 1,000, 1,500 personally, so that's absolutely fine. And I don't think it's a good tool in the job search, but I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, so what advice do you have for people with little work experience, and how should they use LinkedIn?
Yeah. As I said at the beginning, and I think actually that I had answered that, you put everything on it that you have. Yeah, you never think. I think people coming from universities often think that they don't have so much to offer for the job market because they're new, and it's totally wrong. There's a lot of jobs that are tailored for people at the beginning of the career. And there's high demand of it. There's a good reason why big companies are usually trying to get people off universities directly. So there's a high demand, and you just put everything you have and you use it exactly in the way I just mentioned. You build your network strategically, but think long term. Don't think you're going to spend 3 days on LinkedIn, you have 5 job offers. It's a long term thing. You build credibility, you build your network, you look for job opportunities, you apply for it, and it's more probably job search related. As you go on in your career, you probably most likely use it more for sales and exchange basically of knowledge than job search. But this is how I think you should use it at the beginning of the career.
Thank you, Guido. We have another one from Guillermo, the one you checked his LinkedIn profile.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking, do you think applying for a job through LinkedIn instead of the company website is disadvantageous?
Not at all. I honestly think it's at least the same. If I'd had to decide, I would probably even recommend it. Yeah, because I don't think it's unnecessary at all, and it gives people usually a little bit more of an idea about yourself. They're more likely to click on your LinkedIn profile. They get a better idea of yourself. It's much more personal than just sending out a CV, and therewith always gets you easier to the next step, which would be a personal interview. So we always aimed at the next step, not at signing and job search. Not, you don't aim at signing the contract, you aim at the next base you want to achieve, basically. And this is getting an interview at the beginning, right? And if you apply through LinkedIn, they look at your profile, and I think it's rather beneficial than disadvantage. And they spend a lot of money on their advertisements there also, to advertise the jobs. So give them something back for the money they spend. Then we have one last, I think, in the Q&A.
Yeah, but I will go first with Aurima's one because this person wrote first in the chat.
Okay.
I'm controlling this. So if you go up, I will read it out loud. So this person says, I have been working in IT for 15 years, but now I am changing my life and studying just design. Wow. So LinkedIn still proposes me a lot of IT proposals. How to clear that info?
I don't think that's really something you can change too easily, because you want to have your LinkedIn profile in the matter as it was. What you can probably do is, if you go back to the older jobs that you had in IT, basically, and you take out a lot of information, so you keep it very basic. And then the things that you've done regarding yacht design, you've done studies in yacht design, you've maybe done an internship or whatever in yacht design, you put more information on that. Because if you've been in IT for 50 years, I don't have to tell you how an algorithm works, And I think, as more content you feed to the algorithm regarding yacht design, the more likely they'll be suggesting you things in that. And also it's the activities, the more you search for your job searches, all these kind of things will bring you a little bit more in that direction. But again, this is not going to be very quick, probably, because the algorithm learned that you're interested in IT positions. But I like your career switch, by the way. So I hope that helped.
Okay.
What's next?
Julia, in questions and answers, we are back there. She asks, what do you suggest to share on your LinkedIn profile? Create an article, share, or only like other people's posts? How important is to share your personal idea or just sharing other stuff?
I think it's always good to have authentic content, right? So if you're really creating content and post it, it's certainly good. It's certainly helping, and it's very beneficial. Yeah. I just wouldn't. I would find the right balance, because if you post 5 things every day, people might think you have nothing else to do than spending time on LinkedIn. If you're not a recruiter, it might be strange. But it should be a good balance to find. That's why I said spend a little bit of time on it and try to learn the LinkedIn culture. So I think with 5 to 10 posts a week in general, you're usually doing a relatively good job. People post videos of themselves. Maybe you can also invite people to webinars if you think you have something interesting to say. Even if they're other students, if you create things like that, it gives you a lot of credibility for your job search. You can post it on your LinkedIn profile, you can put it on your CV. So I think it's good to have a good mix. For example, I mostly share and like other things because I don't create so much own articles and content. It's also a time issue, but when I do, I certainly post it. If you're in writing or marketing, for example, you probably want to do more own things, for example. So again, it depends heavily on the field you're active in.
Okay. So 2 more questions. Gregory asking, applying through LinkedIn is more important the work experience or the network?
That's a very good question, and it depends on a lot of things. What they see on LinkedIn, they usually don't see your network, except maybe how many. What they see is your work experience. I'd say the first 10 years in the career, 10, 15, it's mostly probably your experience more relevant because you're more a specialist on topics, except if you're a salesperson. If you have a P&L, so if you have a responsibility to make a certain turnover, no matter because you're a manager, you're a salesperson, business development orientated or what, it will always be your network that counts. Because if I hire you, if I have a position for a business development manager, you walk in, you sit down in front of me, I make a short chat with you, and one of the first serious questions will be like, who do you have in your mobile phone that's on the desk, and who of them are you going to call in the first week? Because that's all I want to know from a business development manager, basically. So I think that depends again a lot on the position, if it's more a specialist position or more front position, and the seniority that you engage in, probably. But the network thing is a general thing that's always helpful for the job search, in the job search, and long time. I've built connections with people on LinkedIn 4 or 5 years ago. Nothing happened. 3 years later, we started a conversation. 1 year later, we've done a giant project business with another just because we had that connection 5 years ago. At some point, this person goes to their connections and says, who do I know in recruiting in Switzerland? And writes me and say, listen, we've connected years ago. Are you open for a discussion? I have a project request, for example. So this can come back to you years later.
So Dinesh, he asks, sir, have you been through that situation where a person texts you on LinkedIn for a job, and how do you direct him for the next process?
Yes. What I get a lot is cold texts from people that don't apply for jobs with us, but they basically, a general job search. For me, it's so many. If it's smaller positions, usually I direct them to my recruiters. So I ask them to get in touch with the recruiters. When it's an executive position, I get in touch with the people if I think it's interesting. Cold texting, I think, has to be done in a very uh, polite and decent way, because people get a lot of cold sales on text, and especially when it comes directly with the connection request, a lot of people don't even read it. So I think it's good to connect with the person, maybe start a conversation a little bit about the topic, and then go on with that. Yeah, but it depends on where you are and in which field, for example. Yeah, I mean, if you cold text recruiters, classical recruiters who are really recruiting consultants and active in connecting candidates with jobs, you can always cold text them and attach your CV right away if you don't have any data issues. They will love that, and they're most likely correct to you.
Okay, so the last one, Luciana asks, if I am still on my last year of university, should I still apply for jobs for a year later?
Depends where you are in your last year. So I think it's good to start. It's good that you're here and that you start thinking about this, because I think the job search for the first position starts a year before you finish university, because you have to make your mind up where you really are. You have to define the added values that you can bring to a company. You have to build your network. You have to make clear where you are. You have to build your credibility, and all this takes a while. I would not necessarily, if it's really 12 months before you finish, I would probably not send applications out yet, but I would do all these other things now, because this is the perfect time. You don't want to do it 3 months before your finals, because first of all, you won't have time, and second of all, nobody wants to get a connection request and then a request for a job right afterwards. People feel used, Never forget there's a person on the other end of LinkedIn, basically, So I think if it's just 6 months, 7 months before you really finish, it's absolutely fine to start sending out CVs, especially to traineeships and these kind of things, because they usually want to know who they have, when they have them. Even 12 months, you can absolutely, it's fine to start, because sometimes they just want to be sure who's coming, when are they coming, basically, and they don't mind waiting a couple more weeks or months for them if they're not under high pressure. With giant global corporations, mostly even required, they usually have 2 starting days a year, let's say March and October or something, and you have to be a couple of months ahead in order to start then on time with your traineeship in the giant global corporation. I hope that's answered it. What I want to say last but not least, everybody's more than welcome to connect with me, obviously, on LinkedIn. Everybody's more than welcome to send me questions. I can take my time to have calls if necessary. I will take my time to answer them if possible, and do what I was just preaching for the last hour, build your network and go for it.
Thank you, Guido. It's like a applause.
I know.
In different countries of the world now. Thank you so much for inspiring.
This is why I invited him, to make sure we had the best of the best explaining how LinkedIn works. I am his assistant today, and this is why. And you can also add me. I have a little bit of expertise, but definitely Guido is the person to connect with. Also connect with me. You can see all my connections. I think I have over 1,000 in different areas. Make sure you look at different articles online. Just make sure you're doing your research and understand, when you have your LinkedIn profile, it is a full-time job, especially when you're looking for your future. It's a full-time investment. Do it. Listen to everything that he said, because this will help you. It is the best investment you can do. And as Luciana had asked, can I start now? You can technically practice. Practice those interviews now, so you can see what you are strong in, what you're weak in. And that's a good way, because then now you know what they're looking for. It's not really teasing them, because you're just kind of throwing anything out there and see what happens. But when your real investment's there, you are ready to go. So just think about all these little things, but make sure that you give 100% so you can get your opportunity. And also add me to LinkedIn. I'm so glad that y'all participated today. This was great questions. Y'all are amazing. You're working on it now, so you're not behind, you're ahead.
Wow. Thank you, Guido and Ebony, for this inspiring speech, the LinkedIn gurus.
Thank you for having us.
No, of course not. And before leaving, I mean, thank you. Thank you. And before leaving, I would like to, as I told you at the beginning, this is the frame of the career counseling project we are launching. And to help you to boost your employability, we have this new service called the CV Check. It's usually, let me share a screen. So many of you already know it because some of you, and I see the names, have participated. But it's basically having a one-to-one session with one of our professionals, where they will test your CV with personalized recommendation, feedback, so you can literally like improve it and go for the job or your dreams. And as a gesture of gratitude, we want to give away one free CV check, because we usually charge for, not for the EucA members, but yes, for the non-EucA members. And it will be for the one who gets first to that email. You can see it in the chat. So you just send us an email. I would like to have my CV checked, and we will contact you back. So I will say that's the end of the webinar. It has been very, very, very inspiring, Evan and Guido. Thank you so much for the time. Thank you all for coming. I would like, of course, to, before leaving, and I promise now I will just leave after this, I would like to leave a link in the chat. There you will see it's a survey, an anonymous survey, 2 minutes to fill in, and it will help us, the three of us, to improve and to hear you at the end, to hear your opinion. So thank you so much. I don't know if you want to say something else. Okay, so thank you so much for attending, and let's keep in contact.
Perfect. See you soon. Bye bye, everybody.
Have a nice summer. Ciao, ciao.